Talk a little bit about traffic issues because there seems to be a lot going on right now over the last couple of weeks here throughout the province of BC. Got motorcycles doing 150, 60K over speed limits. We got supercars doing over 100K over the speed limit near Chilliwack. You got a 13-year-old borrowing a vehicle, taking it for a test drive, and completely ruining that vehicle. And we're talking about a Lamborghini, not just like a 97 Honda Accord. We're talking about a Lambo. So let's get into all of these issues and more. Joined on the line by Acumen Law's Paul Doroshenko. Paul, how we doing this morning?
I'm doing very well. I'm in my element. There's so many driving law issues in the news right now.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. What do you think is kind of leading to this big number of issues that are going on? Is it just like, hey, it's spring, the weather's warming up, and people are pulling out their nicer vehicles, and they feel a lot more comfortable right now doing high speeds?
Yeah, I think that's a large part of it. This issue with the Porsche and the Audi that were pulled over. One of them was a rental car and issued excessive tickets. That sort of falls in that category of people who are motivated by the nice, clear weather here in the Lower Mainland.
So, yeah, let's start with those. Officers clocking these vehicles at just over 200 kilometers per hour in 100K per hour zones. What happens in a situation like this? Like, obviously, they were impounded. They were issued excessive speeding tickets. But, is that just something that should probably be a cut and dry case? Or do you see something within these that just so maybe there is a chance they can kind of fight this? Or is there just a message to other drivers, hey, this is going to happen if you start doing risky activity?
Well, 100 kilometers an hour over the speed limit is just inherently risky and dangerous, and they could have been charged with dangerous driving. And I think there's a trend these days for police, if they feel they have that evidence, to submit it to Crown Counsel for dangerous driving charges. But the problem that they've got is if they do the vehicle impound and issue an excessive speeding ticket, then they've already sort of made their decision and gone down that road, and it would be a double jeopardy argument if they charge them with another offense that basically covers the same conduct. But we're seeing that in cases where it's 100 kilometers an hour over the speed limit. Can these guys dispute their ticket? Yeah, absolutely. Will they succeed in court? It's impossible to predict. You never know, the quality of the police officer's evidence. All of those things are up in the air. But one way or another, they each get the 7-day impound, one of them on a rental car, so they're paying the rental fees for 7 days. And if they had a previous excessive speeding ticket, it automatically increases to 30 days after the impound has been started. The superintendent of motor vehicles looks at their record and says, hang on, contacts the towing yard and says, keep that car for 30 days.
Oh, wow. Okay, so yeah, there is a lot that is at stake here, especially if you are a repeat offender. So there's some good advice, I think, for everybody to just slow down and be smart. And not that you really need advice on that, but now you know just how big of a financial burden it can be if you don't smarten up.
You get to 40 kilometers an hour over the speed limit. I mean, it's getting into the range that there's very little sympathy. Okay.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Then there's an excessive range of 60 kilometers an hour. These guys were 100 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, according to the police. There could be may be a doubt as to whether or not they can prove that, but that's always an issue in every ticket. But still, it's just inherently dangerous. And the Supreme Court of Canada just a few years ago sort of reaffirmed that. We had kind of forgotten about it in law, that this was dangerous driving. And they reaffirmed that speeding in itself can be dangerous driving. It's a marked departure from the conduct of a normal individual driving if you get to sort of those levels of speeds.
Yeah, well, I mean, you say, if you're going 40 plus K over the limit, it's hard to have much, sympathy for people when they do get booked and fined with these kinds of behaviors. And, I was thinking about it from my own context. I drive the Coke every once in a while, heading down towards Vancouver here from Kamloops. And, it's 120 kilometers an hour, which, is pretty fast. And sometimes I look down at my speedometer and I'm sitting there going, man, how did I get up to 150? What is wrong with me? I got to slow the heck down. These guys clearly look at their speedometer and say, I got to speed up. I'm going too slow.
Yeah, this thing about these supercars that you wonder at what point they're going to start speed regulating them. We've got speed regulations specifically for trucks, like speed regulators in heavy trucks. This was another news story that was just announced last week. And cars that can go 250 kilometers an hour, there's nowhere you can lawfully drive that vehicle on a highway, road or highway in Canada. So one wonders at what point the federal government's going to step in and say, hang on, we want to see electronic speed limiters on these vehicles.
Yeah, I guess
a maximum 150 or something.
Yeah, I was going to just ask you a follow up there. Is there an argument to be made from vehicle owners on that to say, look, we, there are places where there's a closed track I can take this to, so I can, drive 200 and 250K an hour and be safe doing so. I guess can they make the argument to say, look, you can't put a limiter on my vehicle because I might use it off roading here as well?
Yeah, well, off-roading, I don't think the off-roading.
That's not the right word here, right?
No, but you are on a racetrack. And there's Nissan produces a super high-performance car in Japan that's got a GPS speed limiter, and the speed limiter comes off when you get to a track.
Okay.
And it just automatically comes off. It turns itself off when you get to any of the, racetracks that are you can drive your car on in Japan. So that's another option too, right? But one has to think that at some point when we see just Tesla's the acceleration of them and the top end speed of some of these other sports cars, that eventually the government's going to say, look, we have to do something here because people can't control themselves. They buy these cars because they're excited about the speed, and unfortunately they let that excitement loose and they, get their release on public roads.
Well, yeah, I've never actually heard that. That's actually something that makes a lot of sense to me. If you can have a GPS limiter and figure out where the vehicle is and then be able to track things in that regard. I've never heard of that. I mean, is that going to take a death to occur of someone doing way too big a speed, or maybe multiples? Because look at these issues right now, and you propose that idea, and it just is like, why don't we do that? That just makes sense.
Well, I think it's something that's sort of coming down the road. There's increased, your car is doing a lot of surveillance on your driving now too, right? They could also make it so your car has to release information to the police in some circumstances. Right now, if you get in an accident, they can simply take the basically the black box out of your car, and they've got information about the few seconds before, the speed you were driving, the position of your steering wheel, the position of your gas pedal, whether or not you were braking. All of that information is already there in these Bosch basically black boxes, data boxes in your vehicle. So I suspect that, we will see this in the future, but I think it's going to take a number of steps to get there. And the first step, as I say, is that we've got speed limiters now on big trucks in BC. This is something that's coming in, whether people like it or not. The legislation's been passed; it's already rolling out.
I want to ask one question for you before I let you go here about this Lamborghini situation, because it was, amusing for me from afar, because I don't have $500,000 to go out and buy a supercar. So when I see stuff like this happen to people with these kinds of vehicles, it makes me laugh. Now, I don't know their financial situation. Maybe this was a huge deal and I shouldn't laugh. But anyways, they gave the keys to a 13-year-old. It's hard to have a lot of sympathy for someone who does that, isn't it?
Well, do you believe that? I mean, I'm very suspicious. There's lots of times that we find that somebody was drinking, or somebody was in a place they shouldn't be, or their license was suspended or prohibited, and they're claiming that somebody else was a driver. Not a bad idea to claim that a 13-year-old's a driver, because what are you going to ticket them for? There isn't a ticket for, had a bad accident. You can be charged with driving without due care and attention if the evidence is there, but you've got to see the driving essentially for that. Just the fact of an accident doesn't lead to a ticket. So you're looking at a ticket for no driver's license, not even driving while prohibited or anything like that. No driver's license. So I have like $109, and that's about it.
Yeah.
To a 13-year-old, for whom it has no effect, because they're young offender, essentially.
Right.
So, the consequences for them is nothing. The consequences maybe for the person who, if there was somebody else driving, would have been much more significant. And so it could be a circumstance where somebody's lying. Maybe not. Maybe it's completely legit. But honestly, would you let somebody test drive your car without you in it? Would you let someone test drive your Lamborghini without you in it? If somebody's coming to test drive your Lamborghini and wants to drive your Lamborghini, you say, okay, well, you can have it inspected at Lamborghini Vancouver. After you do that, and you've got, put some money down here, then I will go with you and I'll be in the passenger seat, or I'll drive it first, and I'll let you see what it's like. And then if you give me some money down payment, then I'll go with you in the passenger seat. Let me see your driver's license. Let me see your ID. I just, common sense would indicate to me that that's what you do when you're selling a Lamborghini. But, common sense doesn't always exist in our society, as we know, because that's why we end up talking about these things.
Absolutely true. Yeah, you're not wrong on any of those fronts, I don't think. And it's it's an interesting spin on the story that I somehow didn't think of. But as you say it, I'm just sitting there nodding my head, going, "Yeah, I could see all of that being true." Well, we'll leave it there, Paul, for now. Appreciate your time as always, and we'll do it again down the line.